As a massive civilian evacuation effort comes to an end in Afghanistan, women and girls who remain behind face an uncertain future. From classrooms to the workplace, the country has taken great strides towards gender equality since the Taliban was overthrown 2 decades ago. But as Floyd Cush reports, that progress is under threat.
18-year-old Salgi Baran got the highest score in Afghanistan on her university entrance exams. She wants to become a doctor, but her years of studying and sacrifice may have been in vain.
During the last government, I had my goals, even for several years. But under this government, I'm not sure, because we don't know what will happen tomorrow and what the Taliban will do to the women.
Since taking Kabul in mid-August, the Taliban has repeatedly promised to respect the rights of women and girls. On Sunday, a senior leader confirmed women would be able to attend university with a catch.
The people of Afghanistan will continue their higher education in the light of Sharia law, in safety, without being in a mixed male and female environment.
Many Afghans fear the group will go further. It has a history of denying women their basic rights.
During Taliban rule, we saw that women were not given their rights. Many of the girls were deprived of education. Women were not allowed to work. Women were flogged in the open. So people get scared when they remember that time.
And while Afghanistan has made gains in the 20 years since the Taliban was ousted, inequality persists. According to the World Economic Forum, the women's literacy rate is just over 53%, compared with 79% worldwide. Women own and operate just 5% of small businesses, the mainstay of the economy across the country. And only 4.1% of senior and managerial positions are held by women. Activists fear discrimination will only worsen.
It's hard to trust the Taliban, and this lack of trust and lack of comfort will force us to live with fear. It's like someone who has been sentenced to death and can be hanged at any time.
Thousands of Afghan women have already fled the country in search of a better life. Those who remain can only watch and wait as their fate rests in the hands of men. Floyd Cush, TRT World.
Let's get more on this now with Mariam Wardak in Washington, D.C. She's the founder of Her Afghanistan, an organisation dedicated to the advancement of young Afghan women. Good to have you on the program, Mariam. Firstly, the US and its allies have been racing to evacuate from Afghanistan, ending a 20-year operation that helped to restore women's rights in the country. Can I start by asking you to reflect on the progress that's been made over the last 2 decades in terms of women's rights and girls' rights in the country?
I want to explain to all your viewers that women's rights was present in Afghanistan before the Soviet invasion. However, during the Soviet invasion, leading up to the civil war, which brought the rise to the Taliban in '96, there was no progress. The civil war had caused women to stay home because of the looting, the theft, the raping, and the kidnapping. Now there was a complete blank slate, especially when the Taliban came to power. So the past 20 years, there was a huge improvement, but at some levels, there were also superficial improvements. Now, Kabul has dramatically seen a change because of the level of foreign involvement, the foreign diplomatic missions that were there. They were always engaging with the women that were in Kabul. But when you step outside of Kabul, the progress was quite limited. Women did not have that much access to universities in many of the provinces. We also have to reflect that 40% of Afghanistan has no access to electricity. So schools were limited, access to economic and job opportunities were limited. And there's many there. Afghanistan is known for the most unhappiest and unsafe place for women. Afghanistan society has always been very conservative, and this is how women have struggled within the country. So, though we have made many gains in the 20 years, we've also struggled dramatically in that 20 years. Allow me to explain. There is a perfectly great case about in March 2015 of Farkhunda Malikzada, who decided to challenge an Islamic preacher about what he was stating, and she was called out for blasphemy. She was stoned, ran over by a car, and burned alive. And this was only a mile and a half outside of the presidential palace. 100 people abused her, while 15,000 people watched and stopped them. So violence and abuse for women is quite strong. There has been gains, but not as much to make such a huge impact.
When the Taliban took back control of Afghanistan around 2 weeks ago, its leaders were quick to assure the international community that women and girls had nothing to fear, that they would still be able to go to school, they could still take part in everyday life, and they even invited them to be a part of the government. What's your reaction to those statements? Do you believe any of it?
I think that the international community should continue pressing the Taliban on how important it is to continue the gains, such as educating Afghan women. But remember, the population of women that were getting educated was probably less than an estimate of 20%. Now, there has been an interpretation. So the interpretation is that, okay, it's going to be under the Islamic framework. The Islamic framework does not threaten any Muslim girl. We are Muslim and we understand, and we use Islam as our shield, not as a weapon towards us. Whether the Taliban have changed or not is a question, but the fact that this can help empower my women to push the Taliban to see how intolerant they could be. I have 5,000 women in Afghanistan in 24 provinces. The concern here is that they want to continue. And remember, although they have made an announcement that they would allow the girls to attend to schools, but it would be segregated. Segregation is not scary because this is how it was for their primary education and their high school education. And most of the private universities were also segregated. The question is, how are we going to monitor this? And how do we empower the girls and build their morale to attend to this? Because their visibility is very important. They need to show the willpower to attend to this. They can't show the willpower because of the constant fear that the outside world is instilling on this distraught community. They're already distraught because they had a weak president who fled and left them in this state, and they are unknown about how the Taliban is. So when they turn on the TV, instead of seeing how the Taliban are acting, people are saying how they feel about the Taliban. Feeling and expressing fear can cause more damage to the morale of the people living this reality than actually discussing the experiences. And we have to pay attention to actions and hold the Taliban accountable to what they say and how they behave.
Okay, Mariam Wardak from Her Afghanistan. We'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much again for joining us on the program.